Hey guys, welcome. So I'm not going to wait too long to go ahead and get started because I've got a lot I want to get through. So if by chance you are joining and there is something that I speak about that, hey Adrian, there's something that you want me to go back over, you can always, I'm going to save this video and put it to YouTube when we're done so you can take a look at it once we finish. So I'm going to go ahead and just jump right in. We're going to talk about a couple things today. I'm going to talk to you guys about my journey through dealing with my hormones and kind of my revelations that I have found in my journey. And then we're also going to talk about what types of foods to eat to balance your hormones. We'll talk about what that looks like on a plate. I'm going to talk about my natural approach to birth control and how I was able to take myself off birth control and why I'm such an advocate for not being on birth control for certain reasons. And then we're also going to talk about supplementation and exercise regimen for balancing hormones. So this is a topic that I believe is not really addressed too much in today's society when it comes to women and their health. So I'm going to go ahead and jump in. So my personal story with my hormonal health dates back all the way to when I was 15 years old. So when I was 15 years old, I was having kind of crazy hormonal issues, mostly circling around my menstrual cycle. I was having awful cramps, horrible headaches, PMS symptoms kind of through the roof. So when I was 15 years old, my mother decided to take me to a gynecologist, and my gynecologist at 15 put me on birth control, which is a normal occurrence. So even now, there are a ton of OBGYNs that will refer birth control to, women that are younger in age to help with some PMS symptoms. So I'm going to talk to you kind of about what I did to my whole journey from starting birth control at 15 to where I am now at 29 and how I was able to get myself off of that. So from 15, I started, and I will answer questions at the end of this, guys. So I'm going to give you my journey and give you a little bit of tips and feedbacks. And then go ahead and if you want to post your questions now, you can. I'll scroll back through them. But at the end, I'm going to open it up for specific questions. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys my journey first. So I started taking birth control when I was 15 years old. All the way up to about 4 years ago, it was okay in my body. I didn't feel like there were too many hormonal imbalances. But about 4 years ago, I started dealing with kind of some crazy symptoms. I was having mood swings all over the place. I was bleeding pretty heavily when I was menstruating. I even had a time where on birth control, I spent a whole month. That was pretty irregular, and I was bleeding for more, than 3 to 5 days, which is a little bit, not okay. I was going for the whole month. So at that point, I went to my OBGYN, and I had an implant at that time, and she said, okay, well, let's take it out and maybe be off for a month, and then we'll start to experiment with some other birth controls. So I did that. I took my implant out. I came off for about a month, and I started to notice even then that I was having different side effects than I had when I was on my birth control. So I went back to her. She put me on a slew of about 10 different birth controls that we tried over almost 1.5 to 2 year period. And I started to realize that nothing was making me feel well. None of it. No birth control that I was on was doing the trick of what I needed. And so I started to do some further research, and I was pretty into, at that point, deep into yoga, and I was taking more of the natural route. So I started doing some research, started picking up some books. The first book that I picked up, which I will share with you guys, is this amazing book called The Hormone Cure by Sara Gottfried. I highly recommend. It's kind of a deep read. I probably wouldn't start with this book if you are interested in hormonal health, but it is a great read if you are wanting to know more about hormonal imbalances. Started reading that. Also picked up a book, which has kind of been my Bible since then. It was referred to me by a friend just recently, a few months ago, called The Woman Code, which is all about balancing your hormones. It was amazing. And I read this quote in The Woman Code, in the foreword, that kind of did it for me, and it kind of put everything into perspective. And I'll read it to you all just because I feel like it is the reason why I decided to go the natural route when it came to birth control. So Christiane Northrup, who is a medical doctor who's very well known in hormonal health in the industry, gave the foreword for this book, and she says, giving birth control pills and other medications to women to regulate their periods, improve fertility, or enhance their sex drive is akin to putting a piece of tape over a flashing indicator light on the dashboard of your car and pretending you have addressed the engine problem rather than looking underneath the hood and dealing with the underlying issue. Light bulb. It went off for me. So at that moment, once I read that, I was like, I have to do this research and I have to get off birth control immediately. Once I got off my birth control, I started realizing that I was dealing with hormonal issues all over the place, and I hadn't addressed the full issue. I was just masking it with birth control. And even the birth control was causing issues as well. So that was kind of my segue to why I wanted to really look at my hormones and why I wanted to make sure that what I was putting in my body was going to regulate those. So that's kind of a little bit of my story. With that, I started doing a ton of research on what foods to eat for cycle syncing, or for cycle syncing. So what foods to eat during the different phases of your hormones. So as a woman, we go through, there's 4 months, or there's 4 weeks out of a month, and every week is a different phase of our cycle. So what I believe is eating for each phase of our cycle. So as a woman, we have a cycle that goes in 4 weeks, all right? So the first week of your cycle is called your follicular stage, okay? And in this cycle, your body is getting ready to release an egg. So it's using a lot of energy to release an egg for you to potentially ovulate and fertilize that egg. So this phase lasts for about 7 to 10 days. And during this phase in your cycle, you usually feel really energized, really creative. You have more energy in general. So you want to eat and exercise to support that. So during this phase, some of the foods that are great for your follicular stage is incorporating a lot of vegetables, a lot of lean protein, zucchini and broccoli. So your cruciferous vegetables are really great. Even chicken and eggs are wonderful if you have protein in your diet and you're still eating animal protein, which I think, total preference, up to you. And in regards to exercise, it's a great place to try something new. So since you are in a creative state, it's great for you to try something new and with friends. So if you've been dying to go to, a different type of class, if you've been dying to go to a Zumba class or a cycle class, and you've never done that before, your follicular stage, you have a lot of creative input, so it's a great place to do that. Just make sure that in this stage that you're going easy on overloading on carbs. You don't want to overload on carbs during your follicular stage, just because your body is using a lot of energy to produce estrogen. And if you overload on carbs, it could send your sugar levels through the roof. So, so that's your first stage. So then after your follicular stage, you then move into ovulation. So your ovulatory stage. And this is about 3 to 4 days. So it's not as long as your follicular stage, but the egg has been dropped and your body is getting ready and wanting to ovulate with that egg. So the egg is released into the tube at this point. And during this phase, you are really high on connection. This is a great time to go on first dates because we as women, when we ovulate, tend to spend a little bit more time getting ready and making sure that we look great for someone that we could potentially date. If you are dating, it's a great time to go out with your significant other, maybe have date night. You have this sense of womanhood when you're ovulating because your body is wanting to create during that point. So during this stage 2, estrogen is pretty elevated. Your follicular stage gets you ready for that and starts to build the estrogen. And during your ovulation stage, it levels out a little bit, but it stays elevated. So it's really good during your ovulation stage to implement a lot of tomatoes and Brussels sprouts and cantaloupe. And you can still stick with some of the cruciferous vegetables that you have, but it's also good to bring in, different things like raspberries and blueberries. And in regards to exercising during this phase, you have a ton of energy. So even more energy than you probably had in your follicular stage. Your body is really getting ready for being able to reproduce. So it's good during this stage to implement more high intensity workouts. So doing high intensity interval training, doing boxing, anything that is more of a high intensity workout is great during your ovulation stage. So then during your ovulation stage, like I said, it's 3 to 5 days. Your energy is pretty high and your estrogen is pretty high. And then right after you ovulate, you go into a stage called your luteal phase. And this is one of the longest parts of your cycle. It's about 10 to 14 days. And this is where your body decides whether or not you are going to conceive, or once it decides whether the egg has been fertilized, or if it needs to release that lining and put it back into your body and get rid of the egg that it did produce because it was not fertilized. The egg was not fertilized. So during this time, you have a rise in progesterone in your body. So all of your hormones during your entire phase, so your testosterone, your progesterone, and your estrogen, are always fluctuating. So during this time, your progesterone there's a rise in your progesterone because it has to decide whether or not it's going to release the egg, or it's going to rid the egg from your body, or it's going to need to get your body ready to have a child. So during this stage, your energy will start to decline. So you will start to feel a little bit more like you want to be a homebody, maybe not completely restorative to where you don't want to go anywhere during your menstrual stage. We'll talk about that in a second. But you're going to start to feel a little bit more like you want to stay home and you want to nest. And you want to listen to your body when this stuff starts to happen. If you do want to nest, you should do it. This is a great time for you to clean your house or organize your closet or anything that in regards to you staying home and taking care of yourself and organizing. This is what's happening during your luteal stage. So some of the things that you should implement in regards to food during your luteal stage would be a lot of fiber. So since your body during your the first 2 stages of your cycle it created a lot of estrogen, your body you really want to eliminate the estrogen from your body as much as possible. Not all of it, obviously, but a lot of fiber is great to implement during your luteal stage to kind of get rid of that excess estrogen that's in your body. So some great things would be a lot of root vegetables. So to bake or roast a lot of root vegetables. Brown rice is okay to have. Anything kind of warming, if you think about staying home and really nesting during this phase, towards the end of this phase, anything warming that you're really going to want to curl up and have on the couch that's still nurturing. So root vegetables, any type of like apples, pears. In regards to meat, maybe a little bit more of a heavier meat, so a turkey, or you can even implement a little bit of beef if beef is in your eating practice. And then in regards to exercise, so for the first half of your luteal stage, your energy is still going to be a little elevated because you're coming out of the ovulation stage when your energy is pretty high. So for the beginning of your luteal stage, you may want to stick with a little bit more of the high intensity workout. But towards the end, so towards the last 5 to 7 days, your energy is going to start to decline because you're getting ready to menstruate. So during that time, scale it back. So, start to do a light vinyasa flow or maybe even like a brisk walk for 30 to 45 minutes. So really kind of scaling back your exercise and listening to your body. It wants to stay nested and to kind of protect your body to get ready for this amazing thing that your body does, which is go into your menstruation stage. And we as women, I think, do not give ourselves the time to really embrace each one of these stages, which I think is so huge to our health. So after your luteal stage, you kind of are winding down and getting ready to menstruate. And that is the last stage of your cycle during a month. So during your menstruation stage, this is the one that we talk about as women the most. This is really all that we talk about. We don't, the conversation really isn't open on the other 3 stages until now. I think that there are some women out there that are beginning to talk about it. But just a quick overview of the menstrual phase. So usually in a healthy woman, the menstrual phase should be about 4 to 7 days. Just depends on, how often it happens for you and what your menstrual cycle is like. So during this stage, your progesterone that elevated during your luteal stage begins to disappear. And estrogen in this phase will peak, so it'll get really high, and then it will begin to drop. So it will also drop in this stage. And during this stage, you will notice cramps, maybe some backaches, some high fatigue. If you haven't taken care of yourself during the other 3 stages, you'll start to notice some really high fatigue. And then you have this moment during your menstrual stage where all of that, so all of the cramps, all of the backaches, is then followed by this moment of relaxation. So your body really allows everything to let go. And this is a great time during this phase to really get into self-analysis. So those gut reactions that we have as women really are elevated during the menstrual cycle. So listen to those. What's great to eat during your menstrual phase is anything that's low glycemic in nature, and that can help with ridding your body of water retention. So fruits and vegetables that have a I don't want to say a higher water content, but those that aren't as acidic. So watermelon is great, kale is great during this stage, soybeans, if you eat soybeans in your diet, any kind of seafood or a soup and stew, those are great to add into your routine. And in regards to exercise, you're really going to want to restore and relax during this stage. So any yin class, any restorative class. So really allowing yourself these 3 or 4 to 7 days to really take care of your body. Listen to your body and allow your body to do this natural process that it already does and that takes so much energy from your body. So these are a couple tidbits that I'm giving you guys in regards to what to eat and how to exercise during the different phases of your cycle. And I plan on, in the next couple of weeks, going into each stage in depth and even in starting to put together some plans for you all if you're interested in how to eat for your cycle and how to feel good. I know that once I started to adopt different ways of exercising and different ways of eating for different phases of my cycle, my whole world changed. I am about 3 to 4 months into really focusing on what I'm eating, what I'm putting in my body for the different phases. And I am down to pretty much 0 PMS symptoms. I have energy all the time, so I have no issues with energy. I have, my mood has leveled out. And it's incredible to me. I don't have problems, gaining weight or losing weight. Everything has just really leveled out. So I think it's something that needs to be talked about. And I don't know. I just kind of wanted to open that up to everybody on here. And you guys will have to give me some leeway. I'm new to this whole Facebook Live stuff. So it's hard. It's hard to get on here and see yourself talk and not have somebody talk back to you. So please, questions that you guys have, give them to me. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we should eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of on a daily basis. I'm not going to go into specifics. There are, like I said, great resources out there, and I'll dive in a little bit deeper to some of them in later videos that in regards to exactly what to eat for each phase. But I think a good guideline to know a balance of what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner is always a great place to start. So I'm going to show you guys this little drawing that I did. Hopefully you can see it. Maybe you can't. So for breakfast, for women for breakfast, it's always good that we start with a balanced weight of carbs and proteins. So what does that mean and what does it look like? So I'm not talking, kind of going crazy and doing, spaghetti and meatballs for breakfast, but really starting to look at how you can balance your protein and your carb intake for breakfast. So breakfast is the most important meal a day for women because it does get our glycemic index in check. So if you can have, a couple of examples of a balanced breakfast with a carb and a protein would be, sweet potatoes and 2 eggs. Or you can do, some lentils with maybe, a little bit of bok choy, and then you could throw in some sort of, carb in there, whether you like quinoa or, rice. Just being able to balance your carb and protein intake for your breakfast is so important. So whatever that looks like for you. And if you can also do, you can do quinoa and some eggs and throw in some vegetables. So as long as you're getting a balance of both carbs and protein, that is what you want. Now there are different metabolic types that, and I, urge you to do some research on it. There are people that process protein quicker, and there are also people that process carbs quicker. So depending on what your metabolic type is, you're going to want to implement more. If you're a protein type, you're going to want to implement more protein. If you are a carbohydrate type, you're going to want to implement more carbs because that's what's going to make you feel fuller longer. Now there is such things called a mixed type of a metabolic profile, and those are people that need, just as much carbs and just as much protein in order to process and feel full. So I happen to be a mixed type, and so I balance my breakfast out with, the same amount of carbs as I do protein. So that's kind of a breakdown of breakfast. I always eat breakfast, within 90 minutes of waking. So always, unless I'm doing an intermittent fasting day, which I talked about in a previous video, and I have intermittent fasting days only down to 1 to 2 days a week. Again, I do not recommend doing it more than 1 to 2 days a week because it really messes with your hormones if you are a woman. It's not the same for a man. So men can get away with it 7 days a week and not have an issue, but it really is an issue with women. It will really mess with your estrogen levels and your cortisol levels. So you really want to be careful when it comes to intermittent fasting. So that's breakfast. So I always eat within 90 minutes of waking. First thing I do in the morning is I have 8 ounces of water, and then I will begin to make my breakfast. Sometimes I will do lemon water as well. Begin to make my breakfast. I will cook my breakfast, eat my breakfast, take my supplements, and go on with my day. So that's kind of where I am for my breakfast. In regards to lunch, so lunch is a little bit different. Let me give you a little look at lunch. So lunch, you want to start to implement greens. So as you can see, Dustin, sugar, butter, and beer don't count. So we're not talking about those. You're horrible. So greens is half of your plate. So for lunch, you want to look that greens is half of your plate. And then you start to break it up. So you want to start to implement fat and a little bit of sweet or sugar, and a healthy sweet or a healthy sugar. So a fruit or maybe a little square of dark chocolate. This is going to cut out that sugar craving that you usually have about midway through your day when you feel like hopefully we want to level this out. But when you first start, you want to have a little bit of sweet at lunch to kind of keep you from crashing midday. So as you can see, half your plate needs to be greens, and then we break it into grains, protein, a little bit of fat, and a little bit of sweet. So if you kind of look at your plate this way, it makes it a little bit easier. What this is going to do when you start to implement your lunch this way is going to keep you from getting super hungry at 2-3 o'clock. You can snack. Snacks are great as long as they're healthy snacks, but this is going to keep you from having that midday crash and feeling like you're going to completely bottom out after lunch. So that is lunch. So I usually will have breakfast, like I said, 90 minutes within waking. That's usually for me around 8:30, 9 o'clock. And then I will eat lunch around, 12:31. And that usually gets me through to dinner. I'll have, little snacks in between, maybe an apple, some almond butter. But this is when I feel is great for lunch. So then let's take a look at dinner. So dinner doesn't look a lot different from lunch. As you can see, half of your plate again is greens, which is so important. With women, it is so, so, so important that we have enough greens in our diet, especially, cruciferous vegetables. So a lot of broccoli, a lot of bok choy, any sort of green leafy vegetable. Kale is really, really good for us to process and rid our body of excess estrogen, cortisol, whatever's built up in our body that we need to self-regulate, it will get it out. So for dinner, again, half the plate is greens, and then you're breaking it into protein, fat, so a little bit of fat, and then a root vegetable or a raw salad. So it's really good to have a root vegetable. You can steam it, you can roast it in the oven. So it's really good to have that balance for dinner. So this is kind of a template and a guideline, and if you are more interested in this, you can actually take a look in the Woman Code. She gives an amazing breakdown of how to really balance breakfast, lunch, and dinner for hormonal health. But this is kind of the way that I have been taking on my eating, and it has helped tremendously. So just a little tidbit on that. I'm not going to go in too much more on, the eating aspect of what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So let's move into really quick. I'm going to move into supplementation, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. So it's always tricky in supplementation and adding supplements to your regimen as to what your body needs. So I always recommend for people to start with the eating and start to notice what's going on with your body. And then from there, start to figure out what other supplementation you need to balance yourself out. So currently, what I take is a lot. So I take selenium, and we'll talk about this, but selenium is really good with helping regulate thyroid regulation and excess estrogen in the body. So I take selenium, I take a vitamin C, obviously for immunity, for boosting my immunity. I take a folic acid, which folic acid is great for regulating your cycle. So if you have irregular cycles, folic acid is great to take. It's also great for women that struggle with PCOS, so polycystic ovarian syndrome. It's really, really good at helping regulate the body. So folic acid is great. I take this every day. I also take a beta carotene, which helps with menstrual flow. So if you have kind of heavy periods, this is a great one to take to kind of even that out. I take a zinc supplement, and I can share all the names of these. I've done a lot of research on which supplements, which supplements are best to take and which ones have the best absorbency rate. So I can post these later too. So I take zinc. Zinc is great in blocking excess testosterone, and it also is amazing with helping with hormonal acne. So if you have hormonal acne, I would highly recommend implementing zinc into your supplement regimen. And then I also take, which I don't have with me, I take a vitamin B complex. So vitamin B complex helps with mood irritability, also helps with just regulating you across the board in every stage of your cycle. I take a digestive enzyme with every meal that I take. This just helps your body metabolize in kind of a better way, so it kind of enhances your metabolism. And I also take a fish oil, which I don't have currently with me. I'm out, need to order it. But fish oil really helps in lowering inflammation in the body. So this is a lot. And I, don't expect, and I don't take all of these every single day. I just take them when my body needs it. But I wanted to give you kind of my top 5 that I would recommend for women to start taking if you do not have a supplement regimen. So just for women and cycle health, the top 5 vitamins that I would recommend are zinc. So absolutely implementing zinc is going to be so important to your supplement regimen. Vitamin B complex, always. Vitamin E, which if you're just starting a supplement regimen, vitamin E is wonderful because it helps with cramps. So if you are someone that has a lot of cramps, vitamin E is awesome to implement. You can have it all the time. It's not a problem. You can implement it every day, so you can take a little bit of vitamin E, but it really does help minimize the cramps. And then obviously a fish oil to help with inflammation, and then always a vitamin C, so helping with the immunity, boosting the immunity. There's all types of research too, which I'll talk about at a later date, of which supplements and food regimens you can take for different hormone-related diagnoses, such as PCOS, or if you have irregular PAPs, often if you have heavy menstrual bleeding, prolonged menstrual bleeding. There's all different types of supplement regimens and food regimens that you can take to balance those out. So I'll talk about my journey with that at some point as well. But I just kind of wanted to give a quick overview and an introduction to my hormonal health and what has worked for me. And hopefully this helps you guys a little bit in kind of starting your hormonal balancing journey. And I plan to do a lot more videos coming soon because I'm so passionate and I love it so much, and I think it has helped me tremendously. So yeah, that's kind of what I've got for you guys today. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask right now and I'll try to answer them. I'll stay on for about another 2 to 3 minutes. And if you don't, leave them in the comments, send me a private message. I would love, love, love to work with all of you on helping you balance your hormones. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up for any questions, if anybody has any. And thank you so much for everybody that joined. It's so great to see some of these names on here. I haven't seen some of you guys in so long. Awesome. Well, if there are no questions, as of right now, I'm going to go ahead and sign off. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed some of the information that I shared. And I will talk to you guys soon. Have a great day.